Hello, everyone. Dr. Yonit Arthur here. You are on The Steady Coach, and I am here today with a very special success story. This one is truly epic. I don't think I've ever used that word to describe a success story before, but it deserves that description. Every single success story that we tell here on my channel is precious to me. I love every single one of the people who I've interviewed, and this one is no exception, and it is a particularly important story to be told for many reasons, one of which I think is very important to mention right here is that Nicole dealt with these chronic dizziness symptoms for 9 years, and she is now 100% recovered and living her life completely normally. Nicole was diagnosed with everything, including vestibular migraine and MdDS or Mal de Débarquement Syndrome. She had every treatment you could possibly imagine. None of those things made her symptoms better until she started treating them as neural circuit dizziness. And just this last weekend, she spent a weekend on a boat and she is completely fine. Learn more about her story. Listen to this entire interview. I promise listening to the whole thing is worth it. She gives you some real gems of inspiration and, of course, some advice at the end as well. And as always, I know that you're going to love this story, but I would love to hear from you when you do love this story. So please leave questions and comments for Nicole or for me down below if you're here on YouTube. If you're watching this on YouTube, of course, you can do that. If you're listening to this as a podcast, you can go over to YouTube to join the conversation in the comment section. Either way, though, please like, share, subscribe to my channel, follow the podcast. These things all help me reach more people and make sure that I keep telling these incredibly important stories. Again, please enjoy this story. It brought me to the point of tears and to speechlessness a few times, and I think it will have the same effect on you. Enjoy. All right, Nicole, here we are. Thank you so much for agreeing to come on and be interviewed. It is just a delight to see you again. It's been a while.
Yeah, it has been a little bit of time, but yeah, I'm so excited. I'm so excited to be here, and this was a goal of mine to be on as a success story and help lift other people because I was exactly where they are at some point, and so yeah, so I'm so excited to be here.
I know. I'm beside myself, and for so many reasons. One of which just being that I have personally worked with you. I know you, and I've been able to. I mean, seeing you today was like, it's like the apex. It's like the peak experience for me. You saying, I just feel fantastic and I'm not really afraid of symptoms coming back anymore. And I can contrast that to where you were when I first met you. So it's really full circle for me. And as we were saying before we started, your story, I think, is going to have a major impact on people for many reasons. One of which being that you dealt with them for a really long time. And we don't have enough success stories where we talk about that.
Yes, I was one of the people that like really journeyed through life for a very long time with so many symptoms, debilitating symptoms. And I always knew I was never gonna like stop. Like I was like, I'm gonna get it, we're gonna figure it out. But it took a long time. I struggled with symptoms for 9 years. At the end of the day, it was 9 years in total. So really, like I'm 33 now. And so like when I think about that, I'm like, wow, I spent my 20s feeling terrible and like kind of dealing with all these symptoms that no one could help me with. And that was really tough. And it was a long time. It was just like a lot of years strung together of like not knowing where I was going to feel better or kind of like where to go next.
Yes. Yep. And I'm already 3 miles ahead of myself and being like, we really need to talk about what that was like to kind of deal with the grief from the lost years. But hang on. I'm so
I
ahead of
know.
myself. I want to talk about that.
I'm actually getting into that now. I feel like now that I feel better in my like therapy, because of course therapy, you should keep going after you feel better. 100% an advocate of always being in therapy. But now I feel like I am starting to dig into, okay, so like you're feeling better. Everything is like going well from like a health perspective. So like now let's look back and like really feel how hard that was, because I think we're in survival mode when we're feeling these symptoms, which is why our brain kind of is doing what it's doing.
Yeah.
And so it's hard sometimes to like stop and like feel like how hard it is, because it only makes it harder in the moment. You kind of just like are trying to get through it. But on the other side, I think it's really important to like look back and still like hold that space and like grieve the time that you lost, because it is kind of time lost. And that helps kind of like propel you forward, and live life to the fullest when you are feeling good. So
yes, it's kind of like a spiral process, because excuse me, that grief shows up like in phases, I think, throughout the recovery process. But just like you're saying, it's really often when people ironically start to feel better that it really tends to show up like, oh my gosh, I just spent my 20s feeling like crap. And now it's beautiful, and it means something different to me now than it did back then, but there's still a loss that I have to work with. Yeah.
Yeah, you're so right.
So I think we'll end up probably coming back to that, but let's just start with the basics. So maybe you can just tell us a little bit about yourself. Let's start there.
Yeah, I would love to. So I'm Nicole, as you know. I'm from Minnesota, so I have lived here for a while, since college. I'm from the Midwest, so I've like grown up and lived in the Midwest all my life. I'm 33. I'm an Aquarius sun sign, if anyone's into astrology. And I have a bachelor's degree in marketing and fashion design. So that is kind of like my creative and what I like to do from a career perspective. And then I love dogs. I have a little pup that might make an appearance and say, hey. Being outdoors, I really love being on the boat and going on the lake with my family. So one thing I really missed out on when I wasn't feeling well, because I just had to say no to so many things that I loved to do. So, you know, another layer of the grief of missing out on things. But yeah, I'm just kind of an outdoorsy, love nature, yoga, astrology. That's just me.
Yeah. Thank you for touching on how there's a loss of identity to an extent, of course, that comes with the loss of like ability to do certain activities too. So it's just again just so nice for me to hear you defining yourself this way, even though that wasn't something that you were able to do. Being on the boat or being as active as you would have liked, you couldn't do those things, but here you are now, still that person.
I do also want to touch on, because I know this really helped me when I was like trying to see myself in others, when I was like first starting my journey and finding you, was that although I do love kind of like all of these like very zen like activities, yoga, being outside, all these things, I am like a type A person. I'm a perfectionist. I push myself really hard. I'm an achiever. I'm like a 3 on an Enneagram, which is like the like person who's kind of like motivating and like getting the stuff done and like not taking time for themselves. So a lot of this stuff I've had to like, and this has been something that now is a blessing through this process of like, I've learned to kind of like stop and like be in my body more and like make space for rest and like receiving, versus like kind of always being the person out there like doing, going, wanting to get the whole to-do list done, and like never taking time to just like breathe, which I think we'll probably get to it. It's all part of why I think all this came to me, all these symptoms came to me the way that they did. But that still's in there. It's just I'm aware of it now, so I can kind of keep on it.
So I'm going to ask one of my last questions first then. This is really important. So people hearing this who are achievers, type A folks, has this made you lose your edge to not be as much of a perfectionist or to not be as type A or as hard on yourself?
I would say that I just do it differently. So I'm never going to be someone who doesn't have like big goals and like big dreams that I want to achieve, because that's kind of just like in me. So that achiever is still there. That Enneagram 3 is still there. I think it's the way that I approach it now in more of like a healthy way, where one, I'm aware of these things, so I can kind of like put in the time that I need in between activities and take breaks. And like, I do have to still schedule in breaks and like boundaries for myself so that I don't overwork and I don't kind of push myself into those spaces that I used to get caught into. But like, I don't think I've lost like my edge in that, like, I'm still doing all the things and getting all the things done. And in fact, it feels better. Like, I'm not sitting here at the end of the day so drained and fatigued that I'm like, wow, like my system is just like shot. I'm exhausted. I can't do anything else because I just pushed myself so hard because I'm such that type of a person that I want to achieve. Now I feel like, oh, I like got out and got a walk during the day. I like made time for lunch. I like did a breath work in the middle of the day. And I'm noticing I'm still getting the same amount of stuff done. And I also feel way better at the end of the day. So I feel like all of that is still there. I'm just like approaching it in a more healthy way that like still serves me and like the goals that I have, but also takes into account that like I'm a human and like we have needs that the body during the day that like the body needs.
Who would have thought, right?
Yeah, crazy.
Oh, crazy. And thank you for answering that. Again, I know that I basically asked the end of the interview question just now, but it was just too wonderful of an opportunity to pass up because I know what people often are thinking or what they're saying out loud to themselves as they're listening. They're like, oh, I don't want to like reduce my stress and just like become kind of like a type B person or, you know, stop being a competitive person or what have you. And I think it's very clear from what you said. It's not, we're not asking you to stop doing those things, that the how needs to change, like how you do it needs to change. And I know we're going to get into that more, but let's start from the beginning of the symptoms. So I know you said you had to go back and actually look at your notes and look at some of your records because it's been so long. So tell me, I mean, feel free to, if you have to look at a timeline, no worries. But so tell us how things started and when everything got started.
Yes, I did. It was so crazy. I have felt so good. And which is nuts to me when I'm like, I spent 9 years feeling terrible. How can you forget the symptoms and all the things that were happening to you? But hopefully people can like feel good about that and feel like, oh, like it's possible for me to feel so good that I forget about these symptoms someday, because it will happen, I promise. So yes, I'm actually going to look at my timeline so that I can like get it all right. So yeah, I had my symptoms started in 2014. And so they actually didn't start as dizziness. I started having pelvic floor symptoms. That was like my first thing. And I say that because I feel like a lot of people can relate to that, even in like the dizziness world, that it like started with something else and then kind of rolled into dizziness. So it started as pelvic floor dysfunction. And that lasted for a few months prior to the dizziness kind of layering on top of it. And so all of that, and then I had them together. So that was a fun like combo.
So great. Look at,
of like,
overachiever.
Wow, like, yes, where I was like, well, my body actually is just like going, like what's happening? Like it's shutting down. And so I got all of that starting in like 2014, and it really did feel like it came on like overnight. So like, some people say like it was gradual or whatever, but truly I felt like I went to bed one night and felt fine. The next morning I had pelvic floor symptoms and I had no idea what was going on, which took a while to figure out what that was. And then, again, 2 months later, I went to bed, got up and felt like I was so dizzy. And I like was like, wow, like where did this come from? I didn't do anything yesterday. Like what's happening? So truly both of the symptoms, like I didn't have them one day and the next day I did. And it was just like out of nowhere in my head. Of course, like there was plenty of stuff before that we can get into that like led up to this. But truly I was like, felt like I was like so healthy. I probably, if you would have asked me if I was stressed, I would have said no, probably. I would have told you like, oh no, I'm totally fine. I'm dealing with it. I'm good at dealing with stress. But yeah, so that's like the start of it and kind of how it just like happened right away.
Did the dizziness, and forgive me for asking specifically about dizziness, this is just, of course, my area. Did it start mild or was it like bang? No. Oh, I'm so sorry.
Dang.
Yeah.
So when I remember, so I do remember the day it started very clearly. I like woke up in the middle of the night and I was kind of like, whoa, like vertigo, spinning. Like I just like felt like, oh, like what is happening? Like it was very scary. I feel like those types of episodes, it's hard to forget them
Oh yeah.
because
Yeah.
it's just like so disorienting and like so scary. Like I couldn't get out of bed. My partner, I kind of was like reaching over and I was like, hey, like something's really wrong. Like I literally feel like the room is spinning and all these things. And so it did calm down a bit, like to the point where I could like get up and it wasn't as vertigo-y. So it started spinny and then it got into like rocky. So the spinning just like was that night. And then I got up and I was like, okay, maybe I feel a little better. But no, not really. I didn't have spinning anymore, but I had like constant rocking and feeling like nothing was like actually stable. So it was still like pretty disorienting from that
Hmm.
perspective.
Wow. Okay. So, how soon did you start to freak out?
Um, okay, so I mean, right away I was freaking out. I have always been someone who is a little I don't want to say hypochondriac, but very like aware of like medical stuff. And I get kind of like freaked out quickly about things that are like happening to my body, or I did, I should say, not so much now. But I have a dad who is an ER doctor. So, of course, I call him right away. In the middle of the night, I called him right when I was like spinning. And he kind of like told me what to do. He like had my partner try to like move my head around and kind of do one of those like maneuvers on
Hmm.
me, the
Hmm.
epi, I think it's called.
Hmm.
And that didn't really help. But so he was like trying to keep me calm. So the next day, of course, I call him. He's like trying to calm me down, saying, like, hey, this is probably just like you didn't drink enough water. Like, you're going to be okay. Just take the day off, like, rest. It's fine. So, like, when this then left and didn't leave me, like, kept going on for like a week, I was like, okay, time to get some tests done because like it's not going away. So that's when I kind of started freaking out more, was when it was like, oh, this isn't something that's just like today. It's like not going away.
Yeah. Okay. And
Yeah.
I wonder if you can. I'm trying to decide which way we should go. Let's go in the direction of the testing that you had done and kind
Yeah.
of going down that road. Let's start there, and then we can come back to what it was like on a daily level.
Yeah, yeah. So testing, I feel like I did every test you could ever do. One part of that is like I had a dad in medicine, so like he really was like pushing me and like knew all the tests that I could possibly have done. Right. So like I went to ENTs, neurologists. I did like the full workups of everything they had. So like the ENT did tons of different things where they do like water in your ear and they put you in like spinny chairs and like all of those things to like
Hmm.
test. I don't know what all of those tests are called. You probably know all of
I
them.
know, and it's very gratifying to me to hear that you had those tests done. I think so many people, if they had those tests early on, they would have been like released from this like
Mm,
long standing like what's wrong with me thing. But you had kind of the gold standard. It sounds like you had rotational chair
yes.
testing, you had VNG testing, you probably had
Mhm.
other testing as well. Yeah.
Yes, so many things. Like I spent, days like there testing things, and nothing. And then I had neurology. So I went to the ENT first. Everything came back like normal. They were like, we don't really know. Like maybe you have, they called it like hydrops. Like maybe you have a little bit of that. Like maybe you have early Meniere's is kind of
Oh,
like what they said. And my dad and I both were like, like that doesn't feel like it actually is consistent with like the findings because you didn't find anything. You're just kind of like saying that it could be that because it's hard to prove that it is or isn't.
yeah. Exactly. That's exactly right. That's exactly right. Thank you for saying that. A lot of
Yeah.
people,
And it feels like,
unfortunately, don't have that advocate. And so they'll get that,
mhm.
yeah, we think it could be early high drops. And then they go online and they get Google Meniere's and they're like, that's it. I'm, going to have this for the rest of my life. It's progressive. It's going to get, and it's just not like, wait, hang on. Like, we don't have any
Mhm.
test findings that actually show this is going on.
Yeah. And like that in itself can be really scary when someone says you have early Meniere's and then you like Google it, like you said, and you're like, wow, like there's nothing I can do for this actually. Like I actually have no control over like what's going to happen and it's just going to get worse. And I already feel terrible. So like, that's like the feelings that you're like having when someone's telling you that. But my dad was kind of like, that doesn't feel right. Like, I don't think we should like really listen to that. So like, let's do more. Like, let's figure this out. So then I went to neurology because I did have a history of migraines and headaches in the past, although I didn't have like a headache that precipitated the dizziness starting. Like I had head pressure. We'll get into symptoms. I had headaches throughout this, but it wasn't like, it didn't feel like that was like the reason I was dizzy, but I was open to testing because I wanted to figure it out. So we went to neurology, did a ton of testing there, you know, MRIs, like everything they could scan, they did. And that was also inconclusive. So I feel like every time you go to a doctor, they want to try to give you a diagnosis. Like they don't want to just like let you leave and say like, hey, like we couldn't find anything. Although like I wish they would have done that because then I would have like pushed forward probably faster instead of like holding on to like, well, maybe it's Meniere's. Like that's what the person said it could be. You know, you kind of like hold on to these things even if they're not really true. So in neurology, I was told vestibular migraine. That was like the big thing that they kind of labeled me with. And then because I did have rocking symptoms, my neurologist did say like, hey, this kind of sounds like MdDS. So there was a little bit of knowledge of that too. But he was like, I'm not really sure either way. So, but they put me on medication. So like with neurology, I tried a bunch of different medications. So that was.
Did you try like anti-headache or like migraine related medications or more SSRI
Yeah,
or SNRI?
yes, I did a bunch. I did like amitriptylines, all the triptylines. I tried like a bunch of different ones. I did like Lexapro, Zoloft, a Boost Bar, and like I did all of these things like where I would try them for a few weeks, and then because we had to see if they worked or not. So it felt hard because it was kind of this like titration up of medication to get to a point where like it was going to help me to see if it did help and then have to like wean off of it to then wean back on to another medication to then wean off of it. And most of the time, I would say those medications just made me feel worse. And then it was like, we'll just wait for it to kick in. You're not at a therapeutic dose yet. And so then I would just take more and more, and then I would feel worse and worse and worse. So truly, medication did not help me. But if it wasn't Meniere's, I didn't know. Like the neurologist, it was like, well, this person must know like what it is because no one else does.
Yeah. Did they diagnose you with vestibular migraine and that's why they were okay, got it. So that was the official diagnosis at this point. Okay.
Yeah, and then it was like maybe MdDS, but like it seems like that was something they like didn't really believe in or believe was like real. And then the other thing my neurologist told me, which was pretty damaging in my opinion because of the way he said it, was hey, it's either vestibular migraine or this is all in your head. And you're actually making this up.
Oh.
And my mom was actually with me when he delivered that pretty much exactly like I just said it. Like not in a way that was like empathetic or understanding that I was actually going through and physically looked sick. And my mom was kind of like, she's telling the truth. Like she feels these symptoms. And the neurologist was just kind of like, he totally just like brushed me off and kind of was like, well, we'll do medication. But, like a lot of times this is just in patients' heads. And I wish he could have said it. I wish he could have said it in a better way because truly at the end of the day, it was like my nervous system and my brain. And like there was some truth to the fact that it was in my head, right? Like it was like my brain was sending signals and like that was in my head, right? But like it wasn't in the way that he said it. It wasn't like you're making it up, this isn't real. It was like, hey, there might be something with your brain and like your nervous system and like that's kind of causing these symptoms to create themselves versus like something physically wrong with you.
Yes.
And that would have put me on a path to like you and like those types of modalities faster. But instead it was like, it felt like you're making this up. which was destructive, not helpful.
I'm I'm struggling right now. Like as you're saying this, I just feel so angry. I'm trying to hold it together right now
Mm-hmm.
so I don't get on a soapbox because I want you to share your story. But I just have to say that is just so wrong and I'm so sorry. I'm I am so grateful that you're here saying this so people hear this and they know that they can dismiss that. They can just, like, if someone ever says that to you, you can just say, and I'm not going to be seeing you anymore as my doctor. Like
Mm-hmm.
that is just nonsense. All experiences are in your head. But they're real. They're real. You have a sensory processing problem. Your sensory processing
Mm-hmm.
centers in your brain are not using information correctly. You're not making any of that up. It's exactly the same dizziness as if, there were like a problem with your nerve that was like a physical growth on the nerve. It's the same dizziness. It's just a different cause. That's all.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah. Okay. I'm done with my soapbox. I kept
Yes.
it together. I'm very sorry you had to go through that. And I can't, I can, I wonder, have you speculated? Do you feel like getting a lot of those messages up front was part of the reason why you ended up dealing with this for as long as you did? Like just the kind of these messages like there's really nothing to be done. This is probably in your head and you have like a chronic condition and we don't know what it is.
Yeah, I do. I think that, and my dad will tell you this too, that we were very physical body focused with like what's wrong. And
Mm-hmm.
so when we went to ENT and neurology, it was kind of like, well, who else would know? Like who else would like be able to help with this? Like we're not sure where else to go from here. And so it was like, well, these people, like they must be telling us the truth. It must be like that it's in my head. Like that must be true because like what else could it be if they're showing me tests that show that there's nothing physically wrong with me? And I think that um I held on to that a bit of like, wow, like I'm doing this to myself. Like, so like that like started becoming like this mind trick that I was playing on
Wow.
myself too of like, wow, like I'm actually doing this to myself. Like, and so then there's like guilt and like shame that comes in and like all these things that start like layering on top of like everything else, which of course like is not helpful at all. Um, and I think there was a time where even my dad, like God bless him, he was just trying to do the best he could, like looked at me and was like, I think this might be something you just have to live with. And I was like, no. Like there's part of me was like, is that true? And then the other part of me, I think, that like kept fighting for 9 years to like get over this was like, I refuse. Like this cannot be like how I feel every day of my life for my whole life. Like I just can't. Nope. 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 Not doing that. So I think it maybe was like me just like deciding that that's like not how I wanted it to go. But I do think that it set me back a lot of like
Mm-hmm.
having to kind of like decide that and come to that conclusion of like, I'm going to heal myself. Like, if you can't help me, like, I'm going to do it. I'm going to find someone else who can help me. That's not like an immediate thought, I think, especially when you haven't had, like, I didn't have any health issues before this. Like, I was, working out, running half marathons, a CrossFitter. I like would push my body to extremes. I would compete on high levels in like fitness. I would travel everywhere. I would get on boats all the time. Like I would like there was nothing ever wrong with me. I would go to the doctor and they would say, thanks for coming in. We have nothing to discuss. And so like for me, it was like a new experience, even like just dealing with doctors like in multiple disciplines and like someone then telling me that it was like all in my head was like, what?
Yeah.
That can't be true.
As you're saying this, I'm just thinking about uh, how much there was to work through, like how much you had like a double. I mean, I think anyone with neural circuit dizziness has to do this to an extent, but you had like
Mm-hmm.
a double workload almost. So it's not just that you had to deal with stress and patterns and strategies that started the symptoms in the first place or that made the symptoms chronic in the first place. Then you had to deal with the additional like questions and shame and stress and trauma of going through that, what you're just describing, like feeling like questioning yourself and wondering if it really was all your fault that this was happening. And that is quite a lift. It is. I'm just so impressed with you right now. I'm so moved that we're having this conversation. I'm out, and also just so sorry that it was that way for you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And it's, of course, one of the reasons I wanted to come on, so that people maybe don't have to live in that for as long as I did, of the like, hey, this is just something you have to live with. Because I do feel like it costed me time.
Yeah.
And like you said, like it added so many more layers that I like had to work through at the end of the day to really get to like a point of awareness, acceptance, of like not being afraid of symptoms, of like not just like pushing them away. Cause like, of course, you talk about this too. Like you need to kind of invite them in and like sit with them and like realize that they're not scary and that it's okay. And when you're thinking that you're just doing it to yourself, you kind of just keep trying to push them away. And you kind of try to distract yourself and like convince yourself, okay, I'm fine. But not from a place of like, I know I'm fine because I know there's nothing wrong. Like in the way that you teach us to kind of embody it and kind of like welcome it in as something that's trying to tell you something. And it's okay. Like you don't have to be afraid of it. Like that is a very different approach than don't look at it. This is not real. This is not happening. I'm making this up. This is like just like push it away. Like, so that just like makes it worse, right? Of like doing that approach versus the like invite it to come in and know that it's okay. So I think that perpetuated it just like so much more than it needed to, because I truly thought it was me, that I like did it to myself.
Wow. So you were living with this. You went through all that testing.
Yes. And then I did more.
And then you did more. Oh, great.
I did more testing after that. So I lived with that for about 6 months. And then I came back to my dad and I said, nope, I'm not doing this. Like, I'm not waiting for this to go away. This can't just be how I am. Like, I just refuse for this to be my life. At that point I was like 22 and I was like, no way. Like, I'm not going to like let this take over. And so luckily and my mom is also a physical therapist. So I had kind of like a medical team, which helped, of course. Yeah. Like I kind of had this A team assembled and they were like, yeah, like if you want to, like we're behind you, we're going to do it. So I started doing tons of other testing. I did like neck. So I was like, maybe it's my neck, maybe it's my back. Like we still were really focused on physical body. So I like did a neck DMX. Do you know what that one is? Mm-hmm. Where they look at like, you put your neck in different positions and they like look if you've had like whiplash or like things like that. So it's like a full like neck type of like, it's not an MRI because you're actually moving and it's kind of like an X-ray, but anyway.
That's right.
So it looks for like instability in your neck and like if you've had trauma to your neck, et cetera. Cause of course, like, you know, what affects your vestibular system, your neck, your like spine, like all these other things. So we kind of went down that road. Chiropractic, I did tons of chiropractic x-rays. I did postural, like physical therapy, thinking like, well, maybe I just had terrible posture my whole life. And like, maybe that's why I'm like dealing with this. I did vestibular rehab therapy because I was like, well, I'm dizzy. So like, what do they do for that? So I like did a whole like 6-month like spurt of like a full program of vestibular rehab, which actually like made it a little better sometimes. I think maybe it just like helped me not be as afraid of them while I was doing the exercises. So I think it did bring the level of intensity down for sure. That's probably the one thing that like did kind of like start to bring some symptoms down a little bit from that perspective. I did acupuncture. So then I guess that was the testing. We can talk about treatments after, but that was like the testing that I did. And of course it's tough because along the line, everyone will find something. Everyone will like try to point to something and find something. And so like in my neck DMX, oh yeah, you do have a little instability in your neck, probably from your concussions playing soccer. Maybe your concussions is what's causing all of this. And it's coming back 15 years later.
Right.
And I was
that makes a lot of sense.
Interesting. Right. So like all of a sudden, just one day I woke up and now my concussions are affecting me. That's Okay. But like, was that, I don't know. I was like, maybe that is the case. I didn't know it was wrong. And so like that was part of it. And then I had chiropractic and they were like, oh, well, you know, you do have like mild scoliosis. It's like, maybe that's the reason. And it's like, so I got into all these tangents of buying into these things because like they found something. So it was like, well, maybe that's it. And like I would put my hope into, okay, maybe it's just my neck. If I strengthen my neck in PT, then I'll feel better. If I do this full chiropractic treatment for scoliosis, I'll feel better. If I do VRT, I'll feel better. And so, and all of those take a lot of time. Like you're kind of just like waiting to see if it helps. And I think now looking back, the truth of the matter, and like even talking to my dad, like the truth of the matter is if we MRI anyone's body, you will find things. You will find a slip disc that someone never knew they had and never had pain. You'll find instability in someone's neck and it never was an issue for them. And so it's kind of like, it's hard to detect the things that are like real and the things that are just like part of you that you've probably always had. And they're not the thing that's like causing the dizziness specifically.
Very well said. Normal abnormalities.
Yes.
Normal abnormalities. I'm going to quote a statistic just to back you up because that was just you nailed it. 92% of people by the time they are in midlife in their 40s, 92% of people will have abnormalities on a neck MRI. So yes, we like to now when someone's having neck pain, we may blame those things for the pain. And I'm not saying physical reasons for neck pain don't exist, but a lot of the time the issue is how the nervous system is interpreting signals, not the actual signals themselves. Many people have those same exact peripheral findings. So the same signals coming up to the brain and the brain's like, okay, cool. That's fine. That's not dangerous. We don't have to worry about that. So yeah, again, very well explained. Thank you.
I think that the distinction that I like came to realize was, symptoms, and you talk about this too. It's like if you weren't in a car accident and then got dizzy, you know, like if there wasn't like this precipitating physical injury that happened, like it's probably pretty like out there for like then your neck to be causing like a concussion that I had 15 years ago probably didn't in when I was 22 one day overnight like give me dizziness. It's probably not the direct cause of that.
Correct.
But I think it's hard when you're in it because when you start getting dizzy, all of a sudden, like I didn't have neck pain really. Like I had soccer and, you know, over time, yeah, like my back hurt sometimes and I hurt my back CrossFitting one time. And so like we all have things, but there was nothing that happened like right before I got dizzy that was like a physical injury. But when you get dizzy, things start coming up to you, right? Like after I was dizzy, yeah, now I do have neck pain. My neck is sore because like I'm dizzy all the time. Yeah, my back does hurt because I'm laying down because I'm like bedridden, right? So like, yeah, like maybe I do have scoliosis. My back hurts right now, even though it didn't when this all started. So then like things start to blur together of like symptoms that I had that precipitated the dizziness and like the symptoms that came because I was always dizzy that just like kind of come with it at the same time.
Yeah. Exactly. Could not have said it better. Yeah. Yeah. Beautifully explained. So,
yeah.
Okay. So you do a bazillion more tests approximately.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And then so what comes next in the timeline? At what point do you say, I think this isn't something physical or I give up? I don't know which one came first.
So the next thing we did was, so again, my parents and I, right? Like my little support team that's like, we're getting you better. Like, we don't care how long it takes. We decided like, okay, like it doesn't seem like there's anything like physically wrong with you. Like we tried all these things. They didn't really touch it. They didn't touch the dizziness really, besides VRT a little bit. And so the next thing was like leaning into the MdDS diagnosis. So I feel like I kind of like removed the neck, the back, that sort of thing, and like migraines. I was like, it's not migraine. So like that stuff I got put off the list. Now the thing that was like, well, if vestibular rehab kind of helped, like, and I feel rocky, like my symptoms, we can talk about symptoms. they really lined up with MdDS really well. Like it was, when I read it, I was like, this is me. And so then we leaned into that diagnosis of like, I must have MdDS. And so, and there's not like a test, right, to like tell you necessarily. And so what did I do? I went to Mount Sinai in New York.
Oh, this is so, wow. This is
And
gripping. What a gripping story you have. Like, you
yes,
did
so
everything.
I did
Wow.
everything. So I went to Mount Sinai, and my parents went with me. We went for a week, and I did the whole protocol that they have for MdDS. And it was the worst week of my life. My symptoms were 10 out of 10. Like, and my VRT had kind of knocked them down to maybe like a 6 or a 7. Sometimes I could get a 5 going, and I was like, "Whoo, what a good day."
Wow.
But I was miserable. I would go to this treatment every day. I would then go home to our hotel, and my mom would just be like having ice packs on me to try to like get my nervous system down. Like ice helped me for some reason, like on my neck, helped my dizziness come down a little. And like literally just like we would go, I like didn't want to take any drugs because they said like don't take any medication during treatment, like that can affect it. So like all I wanted to do was like take like a Benadryl and like knock myself out or like anything, because it was horrible. And of course they say sometimes it can get worse before it gets better. So you think you're like struggling for a greater gain at some point, but that never actually happened. And I know it works for some people. That's the thing. Like, I think that this treatment did work for some people that like truly had MdDS, that were on a boat, got off, and like, you know, had the rocking.
Calibration issue. And
I think,
yeah.
So I think it does work for people when it's like truly the thing. It did not work for me. And so, yeah, I left that. MdDS was like my last hope. It kind of was like, it has to be this. If it's not this, then like, what could it be? And so when that treatment didn't go well, one, I felt terrible, and it was like very defeating because it felt like that was like the last thing on the list that it like maybe could be.
Wow. Oh my gosh. You are like one of the most persistent. I could just call you like stubborn, maybe? You are one of the most stubbornly determined people I've ever met. And I've met a lot of them. This is insane. This story is insane.
I think it did help having medical parents, because they truly were like, we're not giving up on you. Because when you're sick, it's hard. It's hard to research these things. I couldn't be online because I was so dizzy. Scrolling was terrible for me. So like really it was like my mom and my dad who were like finding these things, and we're like, we're going to try it. We're going to go. We're here for you. We're going to try this thing. We're going to see if it works. So like some of it was like their relentless like pushing of like, we are going to get you better.
Yeah. So you got back from Mount Sinai. It had been kind of your last resort. And then what?
So then I think I like grieved that for a few weeks, where I was like, okay, maybe this is my life. I don't really know what to do now. And then gyro stim kind of like came across. And so then I was kind of back into like concussion world of like, maybe it is a concussion. Maybe these are concussion related symptoms that I'm having.
Can you explain for people who don't know what gyro stim is?
Yeah, please do.
No, you go ahead.
Oh, you want me to?
Yes, because I'd like you to share kind of your experience.
Yeah, it is a giant chair that you sit in that kind of like spins around in different angles, and it's supposed to recalibrate, similar to like the MdDS. I think the intention is to recalibrate your brain, and it's used a lot for post-concussion. It was made very popular by hockey players who would get in like these really bad concussion situations, and it would like help them recover very quickly from them.
It is actually helpful for traumatic brain injury. So like, and so I get questions a lot about this. Because people go to functional neurologists, like chiropractic neurologists, for stuff like this. And they ask, hey, is it worth spending thousands of dollars on a treatment regimen? And I say, if you've had a traumatic brain injury, then possibly so. But when we're
Mhm.
dealing with a sensory processing problem that's not precipitated by a brain injury, there's really no evidence that this helps. And what from what I've seen is it doesn't. um, and then you're on yet another really expensive, time consuming thing that just doesn't make you feel better. What was the experience like for you though? That's what I'm really curious about because it's not an easy treatment. So how did you,
Yeah.
was it the same thing as when you went to Mount Sinai? Did it actually make you feel worse or did you tolerate it okay?
I would say, so I had to travel for this too. So like traveling, I feel like everyone's gonna like resonate with like traveling also is like very hard when you're like feeling so
Yeah.
sick, getting on an
Yeah.
airplane. So like even just traveling was, part of the whole thing, and that was tough. So I actually I'm in Minnesota. I went to Asheville, North Carolina to do the gyro
Hmm.
stim.
Yeah.
So I was traveling, so that already was like tough. But I would say the gyrostim was better than the MdDS treatment. So that at least like I didn't feel better, but it wasn't like taking me into like a worse place. It was kind of
Okay.
like neutral.
Okay.
During the spinning, it was kind of like a lot. But like then I would be like, okay, I think I'm just like back at like my baseline. So I didn't improve, but I didn't get worse. So at least like that was better.
Yeah.
But yeah, so like I was kind of going down that path, like traumatic brain injury. Maybe this is from past concussions. That is kind of just coming up now, like strange, but like maybe that is what it is. So yeah, but that also didn't work. And they do a lot of testing beforehand before you get into the gyrostim even. And it was interesting because like most of my numbers were normal. Like things were normal ranges. I felt like I was rocking, but like my gait instability test, like all the things were like, you're normal. Like everything is fine. Like
Right.
you're not moving, even though I was
Right.
like, how can I not be moving? I feel
Right.
like I'm
I'm
moving like
moving. Yeah.
crazy.
Yeah.
And so tests were normal, but I still was like let's try it. Like what do I have to lose? I kind of was like at the point of like what do I have to lose? Although I will say when I look back at like the amount of money that I spent on all of these things, it's like another like grief of like wow, that is a lot. And like it's hard. There's like a little anger there with medical practitioners who maybe knew that things weren't going to help me and like still put me through these treatments and like took the money. I know that they probably didn't do that, and like want to be ruthless, but it feels a little bit like, did you know that this probably wouldn't help me and you took it anyways? I don't know.
I hear you. I hear you. And you know, I always I like to assume the best of people that they're genuinely trying to help, but the fact is
Mm-hmm.
that it didn't and it it often doesn't and then people I get these emails from people who are like, "Yeah, I spent $35,000 so far trying to deal with this thing." And I'm just like I I mean, because people very understandably say like there's no price tag I can put on my health and well-being. I get that, but
Mm-hmm.
it's like we're just totally missing the boat. Not to
Yes.
I made sort of a pun there, but we're totally
Mm-hmm.
missing the point, right? I mean, we're
Mm-hmm.
totally missing this neural circuit dizziness stuff, and it's actually quite simple, and it's actually relatively inexpensive to treat. It doesn't
Right.
require any special equipment. People can do it a lot of times by journaling with so you need to
Mm-hmm.
spend like $1 on a notebook and I just I'm yeah I hope and I you do not have to use it this way if it doesn't resonate, but I try to encourage people to see this as um like you you spent a lot of money thinking that you were spending money on something that would help you do one thing, but actually you spent money on doing something that helped you do something else. So it was a lot of money trying to get rid of dizziness, and it didn't do that. But in the end, it's almost like some for some people they have to go through those treatments before they believe that
Mm-hmm.
it's a neural circuit problem and that they can get better. And then the yield, like the overall happiness yield from doing that kind of work is so high. So
Yeah.
again, I wish you hadn't had to spend that money, but at the same time, you did get something out of it. It just wasn't what you were hoping to get out of it, if that makes sense.
Yes. And
Please take that
hindsight
frame if it
is
helps.
always
Yes.
2020. Yeah. Yeah.
Right,
It totally,
right.
and I am at kind of like that point looking back where I see it as a blessing, and we'll get into how I kind of like view it all now. But yeah. It's just a journey, and do I wish it was shorter and with less money involved?
Totally.
100%. But
Me
that's
too.
not how it unfolded. But I'm here now, and we got there. We got there in the end.
We did.
Yeah.
Okay, so what happened next? Now I mean,
yeah,
I
right.
can't even imagine where you
edge of your seat.
Yes, I am.
So after that, what did I do? Honestly, I think I was just kind of taking time. There's always like time in between of like a regroup period where like it would be very sad that it didn't work, and it would kind of be this like defeating moment. And then kudos to my mother, who would like come in and be like, okay, next thing, like when something's going to help, we're doing it. And so she would kind of like, be researching and like figure out like what is the next thing. She, bless her heart, even was like, okay, let's go into holistic. Let's go into supplements. Maybe you have an imbalance. Maybe you have all these things. She is a physical therapist.
We haven't done that yet. Okay. All right.
Yeah. So she got she actually like went through courses and got certified in like being an integrative health practitioner to help me.
Oh my gosh.
So she like did like the 6 months of like all these things. It probably took her longer. I don't know. But truly, so we did all these testing, all this mineral testing, all this stuff, put me on so many supplements. I did so many regimens. My minerals were off, right? But that's because I was so stressed out from just like being dizzy. Like at this point, we're 5 years in. Like I have been dizzy and feeling terrible for years. And so like we did that. I mean, some of it helped a little bit, I think, bringing some of it down. And I did acupuncture. I like started leaning into more like holistic modalities. And like that's when things did start to come down a little. I was living at maybe like a 5 instead of a 10 out of 10 in symptoms. Okay. And so that's like really what started like opening my mind, I think, to meditation and kind of yoga, journaling. I started going to therapy more. I was like doing like some talk therapy, but I like just really focused on like finding a really good therapist that I could like really talk to. And so like all of those things in like that realm of holistic healing was helping. It was bringing me down to a point where I was like, which is like funny to say now, where I was like, okay, maybe this is manageable. Maybe I can live at a 5 forever. At least it's not a 10. At least I'm not like bedridden. I can kind of fake it in the world. I kind of look normal. I can kind of go to work. And so that's where it kind of was like, well, this is better than nothing. Like, I don't know what else to do besides like this. At least it's giving me a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm kind of speechless. I don't even know what to say to that. I mean, I'm glad that it wasn't a 10 out of 10, but also like I look at you now and I'm like, clearly that was wrong. Mm-hmm. And I'm so grateful for that. But I'm also, I know you spent an additional, I mean, if we're talking 5 years in, you still had 3 more years of that before you started to get better from there. Mm-hmm. That's a lot. Yeah.
Yes, still a lot of time in between there. A lot of, honestly, like, because I was like, oh, I'm a 5 out of 10. Maybe this is just where I will be. I was actually, it's funny now looking back, I was actually grateful for 5 out of 10 because like when you go from 10 to 5, it does feel like a big difference. Like, ooh, like I could go out. I could, do some things that felt more normal, more like me. But so I tried, I think for a good year and a half, I like kind of just like grinded out. Like it was like, maybe now I can push it down. Like maybe now that I'm at a 5 out of 10, I can pretend.
Now I can just ignore it. Yeah.
Like now we can just say we're fine. It's all good. We're on the way. Like let's not even like worry about this anymore. But still not in like a good approach, right? Not in like a awareness, like loving myself and like neural circuit approach. It was still like, let's just like shove that down. That works every time, right?
Yes, totally. Yeah,
So
totally a recipe for success. Yes.
yeah. So I spent a year, like going to work every day. I had my partner at the time, like I tried to be a good partner again because I had gone through 4 years of kind of like laying around, not going out. I had lost friendships because people didn't understand. They kind of were like, wow, like, why are you still so sick? Still, like, you still don't feel well. Like, you've gone to all the doctors. Like, there's nothing wrong with you. Like, it was so hard to even like be open with friends about this because, and like, I don't blame them. It's like when you keep telling someone the same story and they keep calling and saying like, hey, do you want to go do this? And you're like, I don't feel well. Like, eventually they stop calling. And like, I don't hold that against them. It's just like part of the process and the journey that I went through of like losing a lot of people, I would say, like in my life in general, that just like couldn't meet me there for whatever reason. And that's okay. I don't know if like roles were reversed, how I would have reacted either. But so for that year, I felt like I was like, okay, I'm a 5 out of 10. I can pretend that I'm good. And I can like start to reach out to friends again. And I can start doing these things. But it like really caught up with me. I feel like I would come home and just like still feel so, sorry if I can't swear.
Okay. Yeah, I can always edit a little word here and there out if we need to.
Still felt like so bad. And so I would like call my mom crying like once a week and be like, I still don't know how I'm going to do this. Like, I still feel so bad all the time. When I get home, like when I'm with people, I can kind of fake it. When I get home, it just like all catches up with me. And like, I feel so, so sick. So it was a year of that. And then finally, I like kind of started getting into breath work and realizing that was really helping me, of just like doing breath work every morning. And then I got on the vestibular website again. I found you through Veda, the website.
Oh, through the vestibular.
Is actually how
I did not know that.
Yeah, because I was like kind of back to like, okay, breathing is helping me. Walking is helping me. Maybe I should start doing my vestibular exercises again. Those kind of helped a little bit. Maybe I'm at a point where they would help more. And so I kind of was like in this vestibular world again of like figuring out if there's something more I can do to get myself down from the 5 down to a 0, hopefully. And then I found you. And then things like really started making sense. I like saw myself in the success stories and in the people. And I was like, this is what I have. This is like 100% what I have. Like, I've tried everything else. It can't be anything else. And I knew that like truly once I started like even doing some of your breath work on like the meditations that you have for like dizziness and things, like I immediately right after them would feel better.
Oh.
And it would come back, of course.
Yeah. Yes,
but even just like taking it down a few notches, I was like, oh, like this feels like this is like a thing. Like this is actually working. And then of course I like went on a rant and like I think for like a week just watched your videos and
yes. Oh yes. The most surprising story I've heard from someone so far is he put all of my videos into a giant playlist that's like, I don't even know how many hours. At this point, it'd probably be more than 20 hours, but he had to drive from one state to another. It was like a 16 or 18-hour drive, and he listened to every single one in this giant playlist during that drive. I'm like,
wow,
that is a lot. That is a lot of learning about neural circuit dizziness. A lot of listening to me.
Yeah.
That was a lot. Yeah. But people go on binges.
Yeah, I will say like listening to them over and over again was like helpful though, like just to like reinforce like, hey, this is what you have. It's okay. Like you like can do something about this. It can get better. It can like all of the good things, especially like in the beginning, all the messages, which are so different from like what the medical world had been telling me about like that I couldn't get better. And this just was what it was. And that was it. So,
wow. I want to get into that. I'm going to give us a timeout here and say we need to recap what your daily life was like before things started getting better, because people need to know. So I know you have a list of symptoms somewhere. So let's hear it. Yeah. And maybe you can tell us what things were like during those first few years before you were able to bring it down to a 5, and then maybe like what things were like when you were at kind of like that stagnant 5 type of place.
Yeah. I'm gonna like read my list of my
Please go for it.
symptoms, and then I can like tell you how they like felt. But my if you read MdDS symptoms, if you ever like look at a list, like I had all of them. So if anyone's watching and they're like, oh yeah, like all of these things feel right. Yep, I had them all. But really, it was like this constant dizziness, rockiness is what I would call it. I only ever had that one vertigo attack that was spinny. And then it kind of just transitioned into this just like constant rocky, uneven feeling, always feeling like I was like kind of moving like this in my body. I wasn't actually moving. Feeling unsteady on ground, no matter the position. So like sitting, laying down, standing, it didn't matter. Like I was always rocking. It didn't matter where I was or like what I was doing. So always like swaying, the swaying feeling, head pressure. I would like kind of just feel so pressury everywhere in my head, just like fullness. Nose and sinus pressure would kind of come and go.
Ears.
I would kind of, yeah, I would feel like I had like a tension headache a lot. I wouldn't get I never had any like tinnitus, but I would get just like fullness feelings in like one ear, and it would kind of, it would kind of switch. Okay. Sometimes it'd be one ear, then the other ear. I like have had a lot of TMJ tightness since all of this too. So that was part of it for sure. I would feel like the world is kind of tilting when I would like try to walk, like, so along with like the rockiness, I would kind of feel like pulled, like a magnet was kind of like pulling me down. Pull. Yeah. Just like different directions. It wasn't really consistent, just kind of like depending on the day. And then I would have,
she's like, that was awful.
She's like, yeah, I know. Mom.
Yes.
I know.
Yeah.
And then I would have like trampoline walking too. So like where I like would feel like I was like literally dropping through the floor. Or like sometimes I would just be standing there and feel like I just like an elevator just went like whoosh, like I just felt like I like dropped through the floor sitting down. Like I would just be sitting and it would just feel like I totally just like dropped out, like a ride at Disney World or something.
That's
so scary.
Those are scary. Yeah.
They're the worst ones, truly. Yeah. Cause it like just like happens and it's like so disorienting. You know, you're already rocking and then you just like drop through the floor essentially. Yeah. I couldn't work on computers. Scrolling was really bad. That would make me feel really, really, really sick. My neck and shoulders were really tight. Like it would just everything was like so tight around my head. What else? Oh, the shower. The shower was like unbearable for me. I felt the worst in the shower. I don't know why, even like a glass shower where I could see out, it still just felt like very enclosed, and like tight spaces were really hard. Like using a public restroom in like a stall was like, my dizziness I would feel like my Rocky just like went like through the roof when I was like doing those things. And just like sleeping, I couldn't sleep. I like was rocky even at night, even when I would like lay down and try to like go to sleep. Like I would still feel while I was laying down, just like still rocking away, still always on that boat all the time.
Did it go away when you were driving or when someone was driving you? Yep.
Yes, driving was great. I loved driving. That was like the one, or walking. So when I was like walking if I was walking at a fast pace, when I walk slow, that's when the trampoline would happen. So like my slower steps, then I would kind of feel the bounciness. When I would kind of like walk faster or just like a slight jog, things felt pretty still. And then driving was good. I will say though, when I get out of the car or when I would like go on a jog and then stop, then it would get worse. So I would get kind of like a spike afterwards of like, oh, like it felt better when I was doing this movement activity. And now when I'm sitting here still afterwards, I kind of get like a bounce back effect.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah. Any brain zaps or palpitations or any like non-dizziness related stuff that you can think of?
I would get really nauseous.
Okay. Yeah.
I had trouble eating. I don't know. What's a brain zap? Will you explain what that is?
Yeah. You know, people describe them differently, but basically just like, so people kind of use this term to describe a few different experiences, but one of them is when you like kind of jolt awake, like you're relaxing and then like something like jolts you out of nowhere. And other people describe kind of like an electricity feeling, like it's like their brain literally gets like zapped by electricity, like everything just goes haywire for a second, and then they feel super disoriented and much dizzier afterwards.
Interesting. No, that's the one thing I didn't have.
Well, I'm sorry to give you ideas.
I would have
Yeah.
something where I kind of be at my normal Rocky. Like it was like a very similar cadence that I got very used to living in. And then like once in a while I would get kind of like, I would describe it as like a big wave.
A big wave. Yeah.
Where I would like feel kind of like this is my normal. And then all of a sudden it would be like, oh, like I would just kind of like out of nowhere for no reason, kind of get like a bigger like rock or something.
Right.
So I guess that would be my version of like a zap or something coming in.
Well, I just want people who are listening to this to hear that I have heard of other people with these very classic MdDS symptoms having those kinds of brain zaps. So if you're out there and you're hearing this, that happens sometimes to you, it's consistent. Also, I've seen other people have that, and it doesn't mean there's actually a short circuit in your brain. It's just, it's part of the symptoms. The whooshes, though, that you described, I'm really glad that you described that, because that's a big one too. Yeah.
Yes, whooshes. That's a good.
Yeah, the whoosh where you just like it's a sudden drop, whoosh type of feeling. Yeah. Wow. So
the last things I'll just mention in case it like helps with other people too. I mean, I had pelvic floor symptoms on and off throughout this too, which were like urinary. I would feel like I needed to use the bathroom all the time, or I was like sitting on a golf ball, like super painful. Wow. So that was like kind of trickled in. It would get better. It would like kind of come and go. The other thing was at one point I thought like maybe I even had POTS, because my heart rate would get so like, I would always feel like my heart rate was like so high. Like my body felt like it was working so hard. When I would stand up, I would get kind of like lightheaded and kind of like all the symptoms. When I read POTS, I was like, that's kind of happening. I don't know. And when I would be laying down, just trying to go to sleep, like I would feel like my system felt like I was like running. Like I was like, am I running a marathon right now? Like everything is just like so elevated. And that has like completely gone away. I didn't have it before and I don't have it now. So it had to be related. I don't know how exactly, but yeah.
Thank you for saying that too. A lot of people have that same thing, just like a dysautonomia or POTS type of symptomology while they're going through this. And it's totally neural circuit related. It's part of I mean, your body's in a state of extreme stress. It's extremely stressed, and it's extremely confused about what's actually happening, because it has to manually process like all sensory information coming in. So it's not able to respond as effectively or as preemptively as it normally does to changes in posture or changes in position. So when you do change position, it takes it time to properly adapt, and it's what is exactly like you describe. It feels like you're working really hard, because you are working harder than normal. Yeah. Oh, wow. Okay.
So I think that's all.
That covers it. Yeah. Just a few symptoms here.
And headaches. I guess I would get headaches too. Like in that I would like get headaches on and off and those types of things too. But
yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Wow. So, and you were living that at like a 7 to 9 for years. And then at around year 5-ish, 6-ish, things started to come down to maybe like 5, 6 a lot of the time. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yep.
That is nuts. That is just nuts.
This
is just like this is one of the most harrowing stories I've ever heard. And I mean, I hear a lot of stories, and I've even heard your story before, but hearing it in its entirety like this is like I'm having like a physical reaction, a stress reaction to this. It's really it's rough.
Yeah.
I mean, but it's wonderful that we're rehashing this and telling the story, because people are gonna really relate. So thank you.
Yes, it's quite a tale.
It is quite a tale. Oh my gosh.
I feel like when I was in it, it's interesting to like hear it all together, because of course, like it was coming in pieces as I was like figuring it out over time. But I think to your earlier point, I'm just stubborn. I like refuse to give up. Like truly I was, and maybe it was because I was just in my 20s and like I was younger and I was like, this can't be my life, that it was like very motivating for me. And I had like an amazing set of parents who
Sounds like it.
knew the medical system and were kind of like, no, this isn't like, we refuse for this to be like the life that you have. And like, there's gotta be something that we can do. So I would say it's both things. It was like me intrinsically being like, I will never give up on this. And truly I felt like I couldn't. I was like, I have no choice. Like I can't give up on this because one, I like have so many dreams that I refuse to like not do. And like two, like this is my one life that I get. And so like, there is no way that I'm going to like let this be like my whole story. No.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. That raises a question for me. So how did your parents, so you started listening to my YouTube channel and you're like, this, oh my gosh, it's this. How did they react as kind of biomedically oriented people? Mm-hmm. How did they react to that?
They had different reactions, I would say. So okay. My mom, being that she had gotten trained and kind of integrative, and she was on the journey a little with me with like meditation and stuff like that, where my dad was kind of like, hey, I feel like this is where my expertise stops. Like, I don't know much about like the holistic side of things. And like, I hope it helps you, but like, I'm not your go-to guide here. I helped you with like the medical system part of it.
Right.
And so she was like, this makes total sense. Like she was like totally on board right away. I like sent her, I forget whose video I watched. It was a woman, a girl. Her success story was like feeling like I really saw myself in her. And so I sent it to my mom and she like watched it right away and was like, yep, this is you. My dad initially was kind of like, I think because I had gone through so many things and we tried so many things and I had gotten my hope up so many times that like this was going to be the thing. I think he was just like a little protective, not in that he like didn't think it could be this, but more like, hey, are we sure we want to go all in on something else? But I think after I like sent him some videos and like after he saw a few of the success stories, I think he was like, this really does sound like you. Like this really does sound like what you're going through. And like, you got to try one more thing. Like, why wouldn't you try it if you feel like it's similar? So like he got there after like a few days, I think.
Yeah.
But initially I think he was kind of like, protect.
Totally. That makes total sense. And you know what? He should have been protective. He should have been protective. And that's why I put out all the information I do for free. Because I know what people go through. I mean, again, your story is particularly harrowing, but I know what people go through and there's no reason they should take my word for it. Don't take my word for it.
Yeah.
Right?
And so, honestly, it's so great that there is so much, that you give so much, because it does help people kind of see how this could have happened, where, like what's happening actually. And just a little shout out to you. Now my dad, he still works in the ER. He does urgent care and stuff too now. He has actually helped so many people that have come in with dizziness.
Oh my gosh.
He's like, my dog, like he does the test, he does the epi, and he's like, he tells them, I want you to go and get a test at a neurologist. And I want you to do a few things. I also really want you to look at this YouTube channel. And I really want you to consider that this could be stress in your life. And like, he does it in a really beautiful way, I think. And I think it's like helped so many people, like hopefully get to this point within like months instead of like, for me, a decade. But, so like he's even, and he gets so excited. He comes home and he tells me, he's like, I think I helped someone today who was like really dizzy. And so that like warms my heart too.
Oh my gosh. All my dreams just came true. Like legit. I mean, I love helping people individually and I like get so much joy out of it and so much fulfillment, but I can't help everyone myself. I just can't. I need doctors to like, just like say things the way that I say things. They don't have to say things that aren't true. And if they don't believe a particular thing or they disagree with me on something, like go, like do you, but like the way you talk to people about their symptoms, if you just put it in their minds, hey, just so you know, it's normal for nervous systems to kind of overreact to stimulation when stress is happening. This can be really normal. I just want you to know I believe you. This is real, but this can also be just something that your nervous system is the cause of, and you can get better. Like if people hear that on day one from a doctor in a white coat, that totally changes the trajectory of their entire lives, like let alone recovery, but their entire lives. So your dad is a hero. That is amazing. And seriously, it's just my dream. So thank you so much for sharing that with
I'll
me.
pass the message. I'm sure he's going to listen to this because he probably will, but I'll also tell him. But yeah, so it definitely has helped more people too. But yeah, so yeah, they did, like, even after I'd say a week, I started listening to your videos. I started doing a lot of like your meditations that you have on there, and just like, I think just even like letting it sink in, watching success stories. I think that's like a great thing to do if you are just like starting in this journey. Like, watch all of these success stories, because like from each person you get a little bit, and like it just like really helps your brain start to believe that this is what's happening, to believe that it's true, to believe that it's possible to get better. And so like, even I would say even after doing that for like a few weeks, I like was feeling better, almost like it dropped my symptoms a little bit right then and there. Like I think I dropped to like a 4, just feeling like I think I like found the thing. I feel like this feels true and like real, and like my intuition kind of kicked in and felt like, yes, like this feels like it's what's happening, which felt different than the other times where it was like forcing, like this has to help, and like kind of like forcing it and not knowing. So yes, so thank you.
So what did you do? Oh, you are so welcome. Now I'm just like at the edge of my seat. Like, so what did you do? How did this all go for you? Because I know you initially started off in our coaching group. I don't know how far along you were into, doing the neural circuit dizziness stuff before you did that. But you were also working with a private therapist. Tell us, give us a sense of what that process was for you.
Yeah. So yes, I joined. I mean, I did your like the workbook that you have. That you kind of like give out. So I did a lot of things on that, and I was watching a lot of your videos. It was kind of like your name became a household name in my house. It was like, okay, so like, what does Dr. Yo like think about this? Like, what should we be doing today? What? And like, I would send my parents things, and like we would be talking about it. And so truly, like this was like, and I was off of work. So just to like also set the stage for people, I couldn't work. Like I had taken multiple leaves from work because I truly could not do it. So I had a lot of time to dedicate to Dr. Yo's world, and I did. I did all the things. I am an overachiever. So of course I did everything you told me to. And in fact, probably too much of it, and had to tell myself to take a break once in a while.
Yes.
So yeah, I did all the things truly. They did start to help quickly. I got down, I'd say like within a month, I felt like I was like to a 2 out of 10, which to me was like a miracle. Like it was like, I never thought I could do this. Like I never thought a 2 was possible. And at that point, of course, I was like, if a 2 is possible, so is 0. So I was like, I'm not going to stop at 2. No way. Like I've come so far. So that's when I like got into like your private, the group coaching calls, and like doing a lot of stuff around trauma, and kind of like unearthing a lot of trauma that had happened in my life prior to being dizzy. I worked with a somatic therapist one-on-one in my hometown, so I could do that and like have someone actually like regulating me in person. I did IFS work with like a specific person in town too. So like I kind of like created a new A team of people that weren't neurologists and that weren't chiropractors, but were therapists that specialized in the nervous system and somatic practices and IFS and you. And like, that was like my new A team, was like these people. Right. And like, I did throw in some like acupuncture in there too, because it did
Why
feel
not?
like it kind of calmed my
Yeah.
system a little.
Yeah.
I don't think that was like the thing. Like, I wouldn't say you have to do that to get better. But like, it felt good for me. And so I did that too. And that was like, yeah, kind of like my team. And I like worked hard at, sometimes probably too hard at like doing all the things. But I was like feeling so much like momentum and progress from doing all of those things. And truly, I felt so much better. I would say that there was like still things that like were triggering for me. The shower was still super hard. The like scrolling on the computer was so hard. I still was like, could I even go back to work? Because when I would go on the computer, my symptoms would go to from a 2 to a 5, like that. And so I still felt like I was like held back in like doing things in life that I like wanted to do. So even at a 2, I was so grateful, but also was kind of like, but I can't work. Like I can't go on a boat still. I would try. I tried to go, and like I would come back and I'd be like, I'm back at like a 5 or a 6 now for a few days. Like it would still like kind of last. Like my system still like had that memory, and it
Absolutely.
kind of like held on to it. It really held on to it when it like had that sensation.
Yes.
And so, yeah, I just like still felt like I wasn't living life to the fullest. And so I still wanted more. I still wanted to like be able to do what I wanted to do. And so that's when I think like I really dove into like all those things that I just said. And like that really helped, kind of having all these people together. And really like all of it, as you talk about, was just like regulating my nervous system and really like getting out of this fear state and trying to just, I would do, especially your meditations, I would do them in the spaces that I felt really bad. So like I would put you on while I was showering. And I would do that meditation and I would just like do the breathing and like get in my body, and like you would like guide me through my shower, and like eventually the shower got better, and like I didn't need to have you there anymore. And like my system realized, okay, the shower isn't dangerous. Like it's not the shower. Like we're actually okay in here. And so I just like started doing that when I had the things, the specific, because I would have like these spikes of like specific activities. More so now, like I still had the baseline of like a 2, but then I would spike during these things. And so I would start doing the meditations around those specific activities. And that really helped a lot.
I'm so glad you mentioned the boat, because I know that's a very specific thing, but there's one person, you know who you are if you're listening to this. Actually, I know you're going to listen to this because I'm going to tell you to listen to this. You know who you are. So she's at the beginning of her journey at this point, and she went on a boat like, okay, I'm going to conquer this fear. And she felt worse afterwards, and she just spiraled. She was just like, oh my gosh, this means it's not, I don't know if I'm going to ever get better. So my question for you, Nicole, if you can just tell me, have you been able to now do those things and not have a spike in symptoms afterwards?
I was just on the boat all weekend.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So, it took some time to get there. I'm not going to lie. There were still like, I would kind of test it. There was still times where I was like feeling better, and I was like, I'm going to try today because I want to. And even if I I feel worse after, like I still think it's worth it to do this today. And
That's
so
a totally
I would
different
go
attitude, right?
Yeah. And
Yeah.
different than like, ooh, like, should I do it? Like, and like kind of the whole time, like being worried. Like it was kind of like, you know what, if I feel worse for a few days, that's okay. Cause I really want to spend time with my family and I want to go on the boat today. And like, that's fine. And so on those days, a few times, yeah, like I would get home and I would be like, feel a little meh. But it would start to be less time. So like I would go on the boat and then I would kind of feel gross, a little rocky for a day after. Then it was just like a few hours after. Then it was just, right when I got off for like 20 minutes, I kind of feel like a little weird. Now I go on and I feel totally fine. So I think it's just like that recalibration. Your brain starts to get more comfortable, more confident, realizes that it's not the boat that's doing it. And also let's remember that my mom gets off the boat and feels a little weird too for 10 minutes.
Right. It's normal.
So there is some normalcy that we forget about when we're like in dizziness all the time, that like sometimes you will just be a little dizzy because your body is kind of recalibrating. You were just on a boat for a little while. So,
Exactly.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I'm going to send her this before I even edit it because I want her to hear this. And
Yeah, so
everyone
it gets
else,
better
yes,
for
yes, it
sure.
gets better. And I also want to emphasize something here that you are doing two things at once that people really need to understand. When you're talking about using like somatic tracking, like some of my meditations and
Yeah.
some of the things that's on YouTube, those are specifically trying to help break that fear cycle, like fear association stuff. But you were also at the same time working on unrelated things, things that had nothing to do with symptoms that were making your nervous system overly responsive, shall we say.
Hmm.
That is a critical element for a lot of people, and they where they get stuck is they're only doing that fear related stuff, and that stuff is so great, and for a lot of people it's the key, it's what they need to do. But for
Hmm.
some people, the other stuff, the you mentioned IFS, internal family systems therapy, for people who don't know what that is, and somatic therapy. It doesn't necessarily have to be therapy per se, but really taking an honest look at the kinds of patterns that led your nervous system to be sensitive and that might still be keeping it sensitive, that in ways that have nothing to do at all with symptoms. That is a key element here, and I want to really emphasize that for people because they're not hearing about that as much when we're giving a success story conversation to people that, it's an hour long and this took you a long time. They may not be getting a good sense of that. So just wanted to emphasize that.
Yes. Yes. And I can just touch on that a little bit too. I know this is like going to be a cinematic, long marathon that someone has to watch this whole thing. But I mean, when you have to talk about 9 years, it's a lot.
It
So
is.
just to just emphasize that and just like give people another listen to like what I was like kind of going through and like what I had to work through. So before my dizziness started, you talk about this, Dr. Yo, that usually there's kind of like this emotional or like this like something happens, right? It's not necessarily physical. Something happens that kind of like kicks things off, or it's like happened over time. I had two grandparents pass away within a few months of each other before I started getting. So this happened like 2 months before I got dizzy. I had multiple people close to me die, essentially. One was like my grandma, who was like my person. And so it was like the first person that to me like meant so much. And it was like this huge, huge loss in my life. And so like I was dealing with that, but like not really. And then like my grandpa died. So like I had like kind of a lot of this going on. So that was like, to me, I think was like the main thing that like kind of like
Mm-hmm.
was the last straw on the giant, on the giant pile of like the trauma in Nicole's life that she wasn't dealing with. And so that was like the thing that like now, like, hey, your body's telling you we have to deal with this now. And first it gave me pelvic floor, and then it gave me dizziness because I couldn't ignore them. I truly feel like it was like symptoms that I truly couldn't ignore because as someone who knows how to just work through things and just get the job done no matter
Yes.
what, I
Amen.
would have, if you gave me back pain, I would have worked through it. If you gave like anything else, whatever it is, I would have been like, oh, it's fine. Like I can deal with this and like pretend and like continue on this trajectory and not do anything different. Dizziness, you can't really ignore it. It really like does put you in your place a little bit.
Yes.
And so then when I started getting into my trauma and all the things, I realized that yes, I am someone who had a very happy childhood. If you would have asked me, I would have told you I don't have any stress in my life. I have not had anything traumatic happen to me. I am very privileged and blessed with a very supportive family and like all of these things. I had at that time, I had a boyfriend that like I loved and thought I was going to marry. All these things were like going well for me. I had a really great job right out of college. Like you would have looked at my life on paper and been like, how is she stressed?
Mm.
But when I started digging into the things, you realize how much pressure you're putting on yourself, the achiever mindset, the perfectionism, just even like the way you perceive events throughout your life that you thought you dealt with well, but maybe you didn't because you didn't actually know how you were feeling or you didn't let that come out. And so things just like kind of get bottled up over time and all these things like start to create, this like pile of stuff. And like, then one more thing happens and it kind of like pushes you over the edge. So I think that there was like so much actually for me to dig into. And that's from someone who on the surface felt like, I had a great childhood. Like things were like totally fine. So someone who like did have something, I can imagine it would be even more. So yeah, I just want to say that because I feel like maybe we don't like in the moment realize like how many things have affected us over time that we like maybe didn't give the space to heal from and like let the emotion come out.
Totally. I could talk to you for hours and I'm almost like, I feel like we just need to do a part 2 and like break down everything you did in therapy. This is just incredible. I have so many questions, but let me see if I can wrap up this conversation and then you and I will talk afterwards and maybe we will do a part 2. Maybe we will in fact do a part 2. Let's see, with all the gold that you just gave us, if you had to give people like one or two pieces of advice if they're dealing with chronic dizziness symptoms now, what would you tell them?
One, I would say that the recovery process for regulating your nervous system is not linear. Things are going to go up and down. And I think that is like one of the toughest things when you are feeling better to then feel a dip. It's tough. I had a lot of dips. Even when I found you, Dr. Yo, I still had dips that were happening.
Totally. Normal.
I remember reaching out to you like, I'm feeling better and now I'm trying to do this and I feel horrible again. Like, what do I do? And I remember you saying like, hey, dips are normal. And it's really hard to believe it when you're in it because you get the taste of feeling better and then the dip happens and you're like, oh my gosh, like how do I get through this? But truly it's part of it. And it doesn't mean that you're like not going upwards in your trajectory, even if you like have a dip. And I think just like remembering that and like trying to get back to like the basics of what works, the somatic tracking, like just getting yourself in a space where you like are feeling calm and like you can like look at it as just like a stepping stone and not like the end and not like the deciding factor on if you're going to get better or not. It's just like a part of it in general. So I would say like just like believing that is like one thing. And then what other advice would I give? I mean, doing everything that you say. Follow Dr. Yo's advice. But like the IFS and somatic work, I think for sure was like a big portion of like having someone in person help regulate your system and like kind of, it's a co-regulation, but like they know how to like do it with you in the moment and kind of like take it off of you. So you can kind of like feel what it feels like to let yourself come down. Because when you're in this fight or flight for so long, like sometimes you forget what it feels like to not be in it. Yes. And so I think just like feeling that is super, super helpful.
And it helps you process some of the emotions that have come from stuff related to symptoms and stuff unrelated to symptoms. You can't, your brain will only allow you to process things that you have the capacity to handle in that moment. And if you are in fight or flight all the time, it's kind of like what I say about medications. And I know medications didn't work for you, but for some people, like, I'm like, they're like, oh my gosh, I just can't even, like, I can't sleep, I can't eat, I can't do anything, I can't think, I can't feel. Well, you're not going to be able to do a lot of work when you're in that state. So we either need to do things in very small snippets and do a lot of breathing and just kind of chip away at it. Or like you said, we need something to help regulate you, someone or something to help regulate you so you can start to work through those feelings in a way that's actually constructive. So it sounds like that was an absolutely essential piece for you.
Yes. I will say the one medication I did use was I had Ativan. And so I worked with my doctor on that. And so she would only give me a certain amount. I knew like, I didn't want to overuse it. I would like use it like once a week. It would be kind of like my once a week thing. If I needed it, I would do that. Usually it was at night. So I could like get a little bit of sleep if I was feeling really dizzy. Yeah. So I like kept a really good eye on it, but it was really helpful to have like that one thing to at least like when I knew, and sometimes it was even just like knowing I had it. I didn't even need to take it. It was just kind of like, I know if I get really dizzy tonight, I could take this if I needed it. Of course, I was like very wanting to regulate it. You don't want to like go overboard on some of these things,
Right.
but that was one thing. That was the only
Thank
like
you
medication that like
for
kind of helped a little
mentioning
bit.
And you're, I
Yeah.
assume, totally not taking it now. I just want to,
No.
yeah, okay. Just wanted, I mean, if you were, I wouldn't judge either way, but people are going to want
Yeah,
to know,
no.
is she still taking it? No. So
No, I'm not.
Yeah.
I don't take any medication now. Yeah.
yeah,
The other thing I was just gonna say was one thing that really helped me was just like telling people about it. And by that I mean people that care about you, that like maybe you haven't opened up fully to because you didn't know how to explain what was going on. Like I feel like before I knew neural circuit dizziness, I didn't know how to explain it. I didn't know how to tell people what was going on. I didn't know how to tell them that I didn't want to come out, that alcohol made it worse, that I didn't want to drink, that I didn't want to go to the concert because it's so loud and I don't know how my system will handle that. Like, so you kind of just say no and say like, hey, like I can't or whatever. And I think that actually that is like even more isolating because people can't understand and to them, you're just saying no and you just like don't want to do the thing. And so I think when I finally had words to describe it and where it felt like it made sense, I was able to reach out to these people and like explain what I've been going through. And like, then you can kind of feel some of that love come back to you and feel like you're supported more from like a community. And like, it also gives you a chance to start saying yes to things with like the out. So like now I felt like I could say, yeah, I do want to try to do that on Friday. And if I couldn't on Friday, I could say, hey, you know what? My symptoms are a little bit heightened today. And so I just feel like it's not a good idea. And then instead of being like, oh, wow, she's canceling again, it's like, oh, like I totally get that. Like, let's try next week. And so I feel like it does kind of two things at one time. It helps you start to say yes to things and also helps bring people back into your circle that you maybe didn't know how to tell them about this before.
excellent advice. And I just want to point something out that you didn't mention, that also when you have an elevator speech like this about neural circuit dizziness, there's also an assumption built in that you're making. I'm getting better.
Mm-hmm.
This is a brain error, and I'm working on this. And people pick up on that, and it's amazing what a difference it is, even if the symptoms are the same, even if the cancellations are the same, even if the limitations on what you can do at a particular time are the same. When you're explaining it to people like, this is what's going on, I'm working on this and I'm moving forward, people will give you all the grace in the world. It's when they're hearing, when they're not hearing that's something that you have hope. When they're not hearing that you have hope, often people don't know how to respond to that. And I'm not saying that's wrong or right. I'm not judging anyone about that, but and then I'm not even saying you should make it easy on people. But the fact is, people respond to hopelessness by like not knowing what to do. They respond to that by pulling away. And when you have hope, even if it's hope like, I don't know how long it's going to last. It may be a few years. I hope that's cool with you. Like, so I'm going to have some limitations, but this is what I'm doing. People respond totally differently. So
Yes.
Just wanted to voice that for people. Really good advice. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, okay. So I feel like we should end our conversation here, even though, again, I could talk for at least another hour about this. This has been such a delight, and people are going to have tons of questions, and I will pass questions that I don't know the answer on to you. So so folks, if you have questions or comments, drop them in the comments section.
Dr. Yo, do you want me to just like for like 1 minute talk about how I feel now?
Yes, do it.
Just people,
that's going to be their
just,
first
like,
question.
Wrapped up.
Yes.
Yeah, because I feel like people are going to be like, oh, well, are you still like, what's going on?
Yes, please.
So I'll give just like a very quick, we can do a part 2. I'm very open to doing a part 2. But I just want people to know that I'm at a 0 out of 10 now. Like truly, I feel amazing. I feel like I did before all of this started. Do I wish I would have taken less time to get here? 100%. But I do feel like I can look back at the journey and like think of it as something that it taught me about myself and about my body and about how like my brain works in the world. And like, hopefully this will serve me I think it will. I know it will.
Mm-hmm.
Intuitively, I know this will serve me in the rest of my life. And I just wanted to mention that now, instead of thinking of it when I do get, so to set the stage and to like be completely transparent, there are times when I still feel a little dizzy, right? Like I feel mostly amazing, but like there are still times where I get a little stressed, something's happening at work, I'm having a fight with a friend, whatever it is. And I'm like, ooh, I feel like a little dizzy today. And what I do is I do my somatic tracking and then I feel totally fine. And I think for me, I now think of it as just like my body talking to me and just saying like, it's like a dialogue. I've like named my nervous system. So like we chat. And so like when this happens, she's kind of just saying like, hey, like you got a lot on your plate right now and you're not taking time to like actually feel it. And so like, I need you to take 20 minutes today and I need you to do a somatic tracking and I need you to journal a little bit. And so when I do that, I get right back to like feeling 100% great again. And so now I actually feel very like grateful for that and like that voice and like that like dialogue I can have with her, because I feel like it like keeps me in a really like level space. And it like allows me to deal with things before they get really big. Like something will come in and I'm like, I need to take time right now. And like, then I deal with it and then it's done. So
Wow.
I actually appreciate it.
Wow. And I just have to say, first of all, that's just phenomenal. I also want to say this is where framing and like how we talk about things is really important. Because you do not meet the diagnostic criteria. You do not meet the definition of any of these things that you were diagnosed with anymore. PPPD, MdDS, vestibular migraine. You're within the normal range. You no longer meet these diagnostic criteria. And folks, that is not management. That is recovery. That is just recovery. There's no other word to use for where you are now. So just wanted to say that. Thank you for letting me get on my soapbox for a second there.
Yes. Yes, I feel recovered. Yes. If like someone asked me, are you still dealing with dizziness? I would say no. I would say that this is just like my normal life now of like, you know, stress and things coming into my system and like me knowing I have a sensitive system and like it takes in things and I'm pretty empathic and I take on people's energies and like it allows me to just like be able to like move through those things without it building up. And like that's just who I am as a person. It's always, I'm always going to have a little bit of sensitivity. But to me, that still means recovered. I still feel great every day.
And going on the boat.
Yeah, it doesn't change. It doesn't change what I'm doing. I started my own business with personal styling. Like I'm like doing things that I like dreamed of doing. And it's like not stopping me in any way. So yes, I would say that I am fully recovered. I never thought I would say that. 9 years was a long time of like wishing and hoping it would happen. So it did.
Wow. And shout out to your business, which I would love to put a link to in the description.
Yes.
If anyone needs a stylist, goodness knows I probably need a stylist, so we should probably also talk about that.
And color analysis. It's like a big thing right now of like finding your colors. I didn't even know that
was like a thing.
So that's what I'm doing. Yeah. Yeah, it's super fun. I do it virtually and in person. So yeah, if anyone wants to check it out. But yes.
Amazing. And I love that it's also something visual when that was a thing, like that was a problem before. It just totally full circle.
100%. Yeah.
Wow. So I will put a link to that in the description.
Thank you.
And everyone, thank you for joining us for, as you said, this cinematic, truly like epic recovery story. This is truly epic on every level, including the length, but especially the story. And just again, for everyone who's listening, watching, comments, questions, leave them below. If you're watching this on YouTube, please be sure to like the video, share it with your friends if you felt it was helpful. You can also subscribe to my channel. That helps me reach more people. And if you're listening to this as a podcast, you can join the conversation on YouTube. Leave some questions and comments there. You can also give the podcast a follow and a high star rating. These things also help me reach more people. And with that, Nicole, thank you so much. Thank you. And thank you to everyone who tuned in. We will see you again soon. Take care. Bye.